right, you learn now that storytelling is incredibly important, right? For three things. Our audience actually remembers what we said, and it's easier for us to remember, so we don't have to panic that we might say because we're just telling the story. By the way, you'll see that, like, I'm not cutting off videos where I'm thinking a little bit. It's okay. It's okay. The real human authenticity really shines through if we don't feel that we need to do it so perfectly, but you're just having a conversation. Do you feel that we're kind of just having a conversation? Right? That's the beauty of you two standing on stage, being your authentic selves, telling stories so the audience can actually remember what you said. The second thing is it reveals something about your character. It gives people opportunities to connect with you. Maybe you connected with me just like the other lady, knowing that I'm from the Netherlands. Maybe you connect with me because I'm traveling as a digital nomad and I lived in multiple countries, in Mexico, in Spain, in Italy, Canada, I went to the US, Portugal, all these crazy things. Maybe you like traveling. Maybe it's just, oh my God, we have blonde hair too. I had it one time, it can be that simple. It's not really a story, but it is something that you can connect with, right? And then the third one, it increases the price. It increases the value. Not just the value, the perceived value. It's probably not your story. It's certainly not your story. And it's probably not your offer. That it's not quote unquote good enough. It's just that people don't understand the value, or you are not able to articulate the value in the right way. That's why you're here. That's why we're here together. And right now we're going to understand what a story then really is. Because I'm going to share what it's really not first, okay? It's not telling your life story in the most perfect chronological way. So you're going back into archives and see it was happening in 1947 or 1988 or 2006. It's none of that, okay? One time I worked with a lady, and it's an incredible lady. Like, she survived cancer twice, and the first time it really overwhelmed her. It really got to her body, but also her mind. Like, she really started to have negative thoughts, and she heard from the doctor that mindfulness would be a great thing. And then when she heard the word mindfulness, the pictures that she saw was like a woman with a feather in her head and whoop, 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 like a vibe that she didn't really resonate with. But she was so desperate that she went to the class, and what happened was actually what she was most afraid of. The vibe, the whole aura, the energy just didn't resonate with where she was on her journey in that moment. So what she learned though is that mindfulness on itself really helped. And then knowing that she went through it again, and when she started to really practice the mindfulness stuff, it really helped her to heal faster. And she thought, what if I can share this from a more rational point of view? Because it was really hard for her to just only hear it and feel it and do it. She wanted to understand why it's so incredibly useful. So she came up with her own way of teaching it. And now she's helping women who feel burned out in corporate to prevent sickness, to tell you, chill out. And she does it in her way, and she's incredibly successful. But when we started working together, she thought that she needed to go back to every single doctor's appointment, create the whole story, and that would be her keynote. And what we did, and this is what you're going to do, is understand first of all what a story really is. Now, let's imagine that your whole life is a movie. Your whole life is one big epic emotional ride, is a movie. And a story is just a scene of that. It's a scene of the movie of your life. So for example, what we did with this woman, she told me all these things, and then I asked her a question. What is a specific moment in time that you remember that you went through? A moment, a scene of your life where you can tell the exact same thing for all the doctor's appointment and all you've went through. And it will be clear in just this one picture or this one story. And she shared this with me. There was a moment where I went to the supermarket and I had two big bags of groceries. And I was living at the time in the first floor, and I needed to go one stair and then another stair. And I was standing there, the main floor, with my 2 bags of groceries. And I looked up and I thought, there's no way with the energy that I have right now to make it all the way to the top, to fall in my bed with all this stuff. And she left the grocery bags. She kneeled on her knees and she went up. She got to the house, she lied in bed, and she thought, my Magnum ice creams are melting. And in that moment she felt so tired, so disappointed, so sad, so empty, so frustrated, that was basically telling the whole scene of all the doctor's appointments of the misery part. Do you start to see that? She didn't have to say that she went to chemo 350,000 times, that her doctor was called Frank, I don't know. But all these little details that in our mind, when you are the storyteller, you're thinking, yeah, but maybe the story is incomplete, it's incorrect. But a story is nothing more than a scene of your life. Is it okay if I share another example with you so your imagination starts to think, what stories do I have? Oh my God, we're on an emotional roller coaster together. We're on a magical ride, I told you. So your imagination is doing its work while I'll tell the second example. Another guy that I worked with, he was, if I remember it correctly, from Pakistan. And he grew up knowing that he wanted to build like a $1 million company, and that was not the country he wanted to build it from, because he thought, I need to go to America. So what he did, America wasn't possible, he went to Canada. He actually got his visa and his papers and he went for it. His mom sold his land. With the last money he was able to make the flight, and he needed to earn money. Now there was one moment where he wanted to apply for a job, and it was in a restaurant. And he was standing in front of this big restaurant. The letters were on top. It was saying something like, let's call the restaurant Floopy Floopy. I have no idea. Floopy Floopy. And he looked through the window and he saw beautiful tables. And it was already set up, and he saw multiple rows of cutlery. And in that moment, he was thinking back of his family, sitting on the ground, eating with their bare hands, and he was about to walk in this restaurant to apply. Now, just this visual, this moment, this is just a part of the story, there's more to it, but it makes the point for now, is the multiple rows of cutlery, him standing in front of this restaurant where he was able to walk in. We didn't have to say that, like all these details about the appointments that he had, the thoughts that he had, the things that he went through. Just this one example shines light on a whole experience, but just by this one scene. Does it start to resonate already? Because there's a bonus on this. And this is kind of cool, because we understood that when you tell stories, you are able to have these 3 advantages. Now, you can have stories from yourself, but you can also have stories from someone else, right? I just told you the story about 2 of my clients. I told you a story of Rob Walker. I told you multiple stories. They're not all mine. So what I look through, and we're going to go through in a different video, how you're actually going to collect your stories, how you are able to collect other stories, but you don't only have to do your own. Now, the bonus is what I call a picture statement, because it doesn't always have to be a story. We just want to make sure that people see, feel, hear, and understand it. And sometimes you have a specific thing to explain. That's when you just explain the facts is really, really hard to understand. And I call this a picture statement. Some people call it an analogy. Some people have names like metaphors and all these things. And let's not dive into the definition of all of those. Let's put them all in a box and call it a picture statement. A statement that creates a picture in your mind's eye so you remember it, your audience remember it. Okay? Another example of that specific thing. One time I was helping two ladies, a duo talk, which is it's not something I would mostly recommend, but in this case it was the right decision. A duo talk doing a TEDx, okay? And they had this invention where they built a car that was driving solely on solar energy. So it had like solar panels on the roof, and it was so amazing because even in the Netherlands, which is one of the most cloudiest countries in the world, it's always raining, it was charged in the positive, which means that the car would be able to drive, and it charged so much energy that you could plug in your washing machine on it. So incredible. So Lori, not so, let's call it educated about cars, was in the audience, and so many more people were in the audience that had no idea of cars. Now, how are they going to explain this amazing technology that they built in a way that other people understand? So what they did, for example, was all these other cars. Who's driving this kind of car? Who's driving this kind of car? Well, that is a bodybuilder who wants to run a marathon. We are the athletes of the road. Wow, so now they're creating a picture statement that you can see in your mind's eye where you actually understand the whole concept of the car. Do you see that they don't need to talk about how much pressure is in the tires, or from what product the car is actually made, or the aerodynamic numbers? I don't know. Like, we don't understand this. This is for a different type of audience. But to get the point across of the amazingness of the car, you just create this picture statement, is one sentence, and it's done. It's clear. Last example, this one is one I heard in a Tony Robbins course around business. And he said, he wanted to upgrade one of his businesses, and he was not so involved on the day work floor. Like, he just wasn't there all the time. He had multiple businesses already, and he wanted to go to one business to really upgrade his sales team. And what he called it is, he literally said, I want to prevent that my sales team saw me doing seagull management. Seagull management. So a seagull, a bird, right? Management. You're flying over. Your brain connects this picture now to the story, which makes it easier to what? To remember. So we know now that stories are really important, and you know now what stories really are. It's nothing more than a scene of your life that sets someone else up to learn something, to gain something, to have a breakthrough, to have an insight. And picture statements are kind of like extra bonus opportunities that you don't have to tell a whole story, but you just create a picture that people already know, that they can already see, that they already understand, to something that you want to make the point about, that you want to get across. So let's now go further in the storyline experience to understand more on how you actually are going to apply this for yourself. Shall we?